forth and learn what we can, because we're learning the history, we're learning the foundations, and we need to know from whence we came and who we belong to. And we belong to Him, and He belongs to us if we do His will and trust Him. We want to kind of go over a little history of Exodus, and it's been several hundred years between Genesis and Exodus. You know, we read one and we go right into the other, and we have a tendency to think the timing is, 1, 2, 3, or sequential or right behind the other, but we discover that years transpire before another event happens, even though it's just the next verse. So in reading, I'm understanding that they're saying, history is saying, it's between 300 and 400 years between these two chapters. So it's been a minute. And we left Genesis with Joseph dying and having his kids swear and promise that they would take him to the promised land, even though they were years from it. And if they were years from it, 300 years, 400 years, that was a long time. So several hundred years I'll say several hundred, because one was saying another one. So if we run across it in Scripture to tell us just how many years. But several hundred years had passed, and they went down into Egypt with 70 within his household, not counting the service and everything else was going on. But they're going to come out in millions. Millions. What comes to mind when you see 70 versus million? What promise kind of say, yes, that's what he said, that's what he said? What promise kind of comes to mind when you see millions?
The sand on the shore, the stars in the sky, the dust of the earth.
Amen. So these are the things we think about when we learn that there were millions that came out. And that's what Exodus is going to be about. We're talking about the deliverance, the coming out. And when you hear that word, it's something, there's expectation. There's a time where this won't last always. We know a song, trouble don't last always. There's a time and a season for everything, and we know that it's going to be better. So that's what we're talking about. So if it's a book of deliverance, it's kind of like a book of redemption. Redemption from what? Redemption from bondage. The redemption and deliverance from bondage, because when we left Genesis, they were enjoying the good life under a good Pharaoh, and things were well, but we're going to learn in Exodus that things changed. Things changed. What are some of the things you think of in Exodus? What are some of the miracles you can think of in Exodus? What comes to mind? What are some of them?
The big one is the Red Sea.
The Red Sea.
Plague.
The plague. P-L.
A-G-U-E-S. S.
Okay. Anything else? What? It was about 18 of them. So what else can you think of? Some of the things, miracles that happened in when we think of Exodus, we think of certain things about Exodus.
Pharaoh.
Okay. Who was he?
Like the king of the land.
P-H-A-R-A-O-N.
And he was the new Pharaoh. He's the same Pharaoh that Joseph had.
That's right. So that's why things change. What are some of the other things we think of when we think of Exodus?
The people were in slavery.
Slavery? Wow. So we come from enjoying the good life and do whatever you want to do, and to slavery? Wow. So we're going to learn about how that came about. What else do we think about when we think about Exodus?
Exodus.
Exiting.
departure,
Okay, departure. We know at some point they're going to depart because God told who?
Moses.
Moses,
He told, who did he tell before? He told him.
Abraham.
He told Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, I'm going to bring you out. I'm going to deliver you. You know, so if you know you're going to be delivered in the first place, you know, why should we be bound? Why should we be so upset? Sometimes situations come in our lives and it's like it's so overwhelming and this is so much I can't handle it, I can't process it. But if we think ahead and knowing that God's going to get me out of this, He's going to take me through it or He's going to deliver me, He'll make a way of escape. When we start thinking that way, it kind of relieves all that apprehension. But who wants the apprehension? Who wants you to be that way? The enemy. The enemy. He wants you to be uptight. I don't know what I'm going to do. Say that. He wants that. So we have to think beyond flesh and conditions, like the pastor was looking at his illustration was he was holding on to the mic because that was the problem. And he said, oh, my problem. Oh, I don't know what to do. And he's just holding on to it. And he said, what's wrong with this picture? He wasn't looking to Jesus. He was focusing on the problem. What else can we think of that we're going to talk about in Exodus?
The birth of Moses.
The birth, okay.
How about deliverance?
Deliverance, departure, deliverance.
That's a miracle.
Yes. Yes, it was. I mean, 6 million men, not counting women and children, that came out of there.
What about prejudice?
Prejudice.
Remember when Miriam and Aaron talked about Moses' wife? They didn't appreciate her color.
Okay. How do you spell that?
Judice.
Prejudice, all right. So these are some of the things. What about, if you look up in the sky, what was part of Exodus?
Cloud.
Cloud.
Cloud by night.
Oh, yeah.
And what?
And cloud by day and fire by night.
We're just naming some of the things that we're going to encounter with this brand new book we're in. What book are we in?
Exodus.
Exodus meaning departure, deliverance, get out of here, bye, I'm gone. All of these things. And these are some of the things that's going to happen. Can we think of any more?
How about the Ten Commandments?
The commandments? Was that in Exodus?
Yes. 20 chapter.
Okay.
Freedom.
Freedom, departure, deliverance, freedom.
And in the wilderness.
The wilderness experience. The wilderness. Did it have to be that way?
No.
Didn't have to be that way.
They were complaining and it was disobedience. Bread. Water.
Manna.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover a lot, aren't we?
Yes.
It's 40 chapters, but we're going further into, and this is God's layout, God's plan, God's process of redemption, working our way to Jesus. Working our way to Jesus. And we're just going to follow through and see what's going on, what's really going on. So,
What was the promised land?
Promised land, okay.
That's the next step.
And what was the other?
Memorial.
We're going to go through a lot. All right, so let's get started then. And there were a lot more that we didn't even cover, but those were major, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
When you think of hands, what do you think about? Hands. What happened with hands? Leprosy. We're going to be encountered with that. Okay. And the one I liked when Moses came down off the mountain, his face, what? It shone, you know. He had been with God, you know. So all of these things are going to come forth. And what about the rod? It just laid there, huh? It was turned to a serpent, then it was turned back to a rod. All right, so let's start with,
Sorry.
okay.
I had to turn it off so it don't rain.
How did God get Moses' attention?
The bush.
The bush. Did we put that up there?
No, it ain't up.
So it's just a lot of them, isn't it? It's a lot of them. All right. Pardon? The tabernacle. All right. That was the initiation of the tabernacle. All right. So all of these things we're going to cover at some point. When we cover them, we may come back and check them off just to see just where we are. All right, let's get started and see how far we're going to get with this. We have a whole 45 minutes. Okay. What new name did we learn about God in this book?
Jehovah Jireh.
Jehovah Jireh. My banner. What's banner?
Nisi.
Jehovah Nisi. So Exodus is kind of like the Israelites, comparable to what? What day do we have? Is that September?
On Memorial Day or Labor Day?
Is that the same thing as Independence Day? When is in
September.
September? So Exodus is kind of like their Independence Day. July 4th, deliverance, you know, being set free. It's kind of like their Constitution. This is when God is, you know, getting them to a point that he wants them to be. Now, talking about Moses, which tribe did he come through? Levite, okay. We remember Moses, and he came through Levite. What do we know about the Levites? What stands out time we say that word?
Priest.
The priest.
They were part of the ones that killed the Shechemites too. That was the Shechemites.
Them and Simeons, right? All right, so we're going to go, and I was reading in one place, it says, it took God only one night to get the people out of Egypt. How long did it take to get Egypt out of the people? Forever. Well, we know a number. Before he took them over, he spent them around for how long?
40 years.
40 years. So he told them to be ready and get out. He did all of that one night, but they had the wrong 40 years to get some of Egypt out of them because they said, we've been bet out, we had to stay. We like cucumbers and all of that. So this is where we're going to go. So the first 18 chapters, God is calling Moses to declare judgment on Pharaoh and to lead his people out of Egypt into the promised land. The 19th to the 40th chapter, God is going to educate his people in the responsibility of living holy and laws and statutes. So we're going to learn all of that. So let's go with chapter 1 of Exodus. Now is the first word. What is that? What comes to mind when you said now? Currently. And how would and fit in? We've had breakfast, lunch, and now So that means we've done something prior, right? So this is kind of just saying all that we talked about in Genesis, and he's saying now. So we could say and, because this is like a continuation, you know, like a continuation. Genesis wasn't the end of the story. Now, we did all of that. Joseph died. They promised to take me home. God is going to bless us with our land. Now. And then we pick up Exodus. All right, so now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. So they went into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. All right, so this is kind of like them going in, and Leviticus and Numbers. What other books do we associate with Genesis?
Revelation.
Consecutively. No, Genesis. What are the first 5 books?
Genesis,
Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers.
And what do we call those?
The Torah.
The Torah or the Pentateuch? Is that the same thing? Okay. The Torah, and so they're connected. They're connected, okay? So that's where I'm saying that. I had the Pentateuch in mind. The books of law. We're starting off with it, and they're divided up into sections because we have poetry, we have prophecy, we have history, law. So these first 5 books are part of the Pentateuch or Torah. All right, so we know the names of the kids, right? And that's what verse 2, 3, and 4 name. And all the souls that came out of the lions of Jacob were 70 souls. But Jacob was in Egypt already. And we know how we got to 70, right? We remember talking about that? It was 66, and then we take the out of his house, and 66 was out of his land, and that brought it up to 70. We talked about that in chapter 46. Okay? And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. And we know, as we started out, that history told us there's several hundred years between Genesis and Exodus. So he tells you there were 70. Now they were exceedingly abundant. They multiplied. They waxed exceedingly mighty. They were fruitful. All of that saying is it was a lot of them. It wasn't just a little few as before. And where did they live in Egypt?
Goshen.
They lived in Goshen. Okay. So we see the fulfillment of the prophets to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that you will multiply, you will be plentiful, you will be exceedingly mighty. So just fulfillment. The 8th verse says, and now arose a what?
A new king.
A new sheriff in town. A new king that what? Knew not Joseph. Now what were the advantages of the king, the Pharaoh that was in charge when Joseph was around? What were some of the advantages?
They were not in slavery.
They were not in slavery.
They were free.
They were free. The king told them, go, whatever you need to do it. Joseph was like, what, 92 in line? Where was he?
He was number 1 in line.
He was next in line to the king. The only one over him was the king. So in the king said, bring your family on down. Yeah, you all can live over there. Whatever you need is there available to you. So this one knew not Joseph, because Joseph been gone now for a minute.
Yeah, that explains why he had to wait so many years to get him to this point. This sentence right here. Because that, what is it? Each generation is at least 20 years. So if it was 200 to 300 years between Genesis and Exodus, that was like 14, 15 generations.
It took a minute.
for them to know not Joseph, because he was renowned.
Right. So all of that, and the verse before it said Joseph died and all his brethren died, so everybody's gone. Now it's a new group, and the kids and the great-grandkids have grew up, you know, and that pushes everybody a little over. Every time you see one of the babies and they come and say, oh, I'm out of high school, I'm getting ready for college, where has that pushed you? That's to push you at least, 10, 12 years older. No matter how you're feeling, you are older. No, that's what it said, which knew not Joseph. None of the stuff.
Yeah, he didn't know Joseph, in addition not knowing that he had, lured up the food so that they wouldn't die in famine. He knew none of that.
None of that. Several hundred years had passed, and he knew none of that. Just like generation after generation after generation here. I don't know my great-great-great-grandparents. I knew not my great-great-great-great. I only know the next section over. And some of them I only know by pictures. You know, you just don't know them. So after the death of Joseph, there was a change in dynasties. And that dynasty, this new king, made the race of the Israelites, made them slaves, didn't he? And he said unto his people, behold, the people of Israel are more and mightier than we. This group that been living in Goshen for all of these years, they are getting pretty strong. And why did he even consider that? What was on his mind?
He was afraid that he was going to lose his authority.
Lose his authority. So I don't want you to get too big.
They're going to take over. Take over.
He said, come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. So we have to do something. So he had a little foresight for his own good, for his own neck, for his own job. But reading that verse, what comes to mind? He said, let's deal wisely with them. His idea was what? Just the opposite of true wisdom. Why? Just the opposite of true wisdom. And it was really the downfall of Egypt. Now, how do I get all that in there? Because he did what? Thinking of Moses, who did Moses live with when he was past 3 months old?
He lived in Pharaoh.
So he brought up and he educated and he prepared the very man that was going to do the things he feared was going to happen. Isn't God just amazing?
Yes, he is amazing.
Now, if this is the same Pharaoh, because 80 years passed before, and they reigned hundreds of years, so I don't see where it's not. But even if he wasn't, he was thinking in terms of his, predecessor, successor, and he was thinking in terms of maintaining their dynasty. But let's deal wisely with him. But as it turned out, can't God, it just brought a smile to my face how God can, use that word again, orchestrate things that you never thought of. So he raised, he educated, he trained, he housed the very one that was going to be Egypt's downfall in the first place. But God, he's just amazing how he can fix that. That's why our little stuff is nothing to God.
Amen.
What did he call these little what? Little light afflictions is nothing to God, isn't it? Because true wisdom is what? Divine, surrendering to the will of God. That's true wisdom. So he said, let's deal with them wisely. And this is what we're going to do. So that was man's idea. but he housed and raised and educated the very instrument God was going to use. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Rameses. These were stored cities for public granary and deposit of war provisions. So they got them working. They were put taskmasters over them to keep them busy. So they were like the superintendent of public works, and they were allotted the work to them, and they said, make it hard, make it hard. And so they were men of rank, and they knew how to browbeat and depress and afflict and abuse people. So that's who Pharaoh employed to put over God's chosen people. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. What you going to do with God? I mean, what's that statement? Your arms are just too short to box with God. You know, when you're fighting against the Lord, you won't win. You won't win. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. Jacob's family grew into a large nation, but they were foreigners and newcomers, and they liked the rights of the native Egyptians, so they were subjected to slavery. They just couldn't step out because they weren't in their land. They were nomads. They were sojourners. So they had lived in this land. They had the fringe benefits of the good Pharaoh, but now somebody's coming along and put taskmasters over them, and they were subjected to that because they didn't have any rights in this land. They weren't natives of that land. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor, meaning what? Hardship, rugged, no rest for the weary. Get up. It's time to go to work. 4:30 in the morning, get up. Work to 9:30 at night. What that, lift that bale, carry that, tote that bale. Right. So they made them serve with rigor, and they made their lives what? Bitter and hard bondage, in mortar and in bricks and in all manners of service in the field. So anything they wanted done, go get one of them. Do this. Make some bricks. Go to the field. Pick this up. You know, go get that. So they made their lives bitter and hard bondage, didn't they? And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the names of one was Shiphrah and the name of the other one was Putah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stool, if it be a son, then shall ye kill him. But if it's a daughter, then let her live. What? How cold-blooded is this? Kill the boy babies. Why?
He didn't want him to grow up and take over Egypt. He figured they would grow up and
kill the seed. Kill that seed. Another attempt of Satan to what? Destroy all the males of Israel. So who wouldn't come? Jesus. The whole point. Kill them. Beat them. Kill them. And so that was the whole point. Satan, don't ever stop. Don't ever think Satan is your friend. I don't care what he give you, what he promised you, or how good it look. It's just gold-plated. It's not the real stuff. Satan is not your friend. So it was just another attempt to destroy all the males of Israel. So the Messiah, because the Messiah is coming through who? The line of Judah, out of the 12. But the midwives feared God and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men and children alive. They knew that it was a sin, and it was back in Genesis where there was a death penalty, command of God that you wouldn't be killing anybody. And God does not expect us to obey sin, does he? God don't expect you. Somebody tell you something, I don't care if they are in authority, you don't obey them if it's wrong. And so what verse do we think of when we say that? It's in Acts. It's better. What verse do we say?
I only think I was remember is better married in the burn.
Oh, the better. I said, what verse do we think of when we say, if it's wrong, then you need to obey God? It's better to obey God rather than man. And can you think of anybody that obeyed God and put their life on the line? Mm-hmm. Can you think of anybody? Three Hebrew boys. They said, we're not going to bow. We're not going to bow. So they put them in, and the ones that tried to put them in got burned. Isn't that amazing? You trying to put me in, but I'm standing on the Lord's side. And you put me in, and then the king himself, wasn't it? Peeked in. What did he say?
He put in 3, but I see 4.
It looked like I see 4 walking around. What is really going on? You know, so we can't lose with God. We can't lose. And Esther said, I'm going. If I perish, a very famous line. If I perish, I perish, but I'm going. So you have to have a conviction. You have to have a determination. You can't be dissuaded by circumstances when it comes to the will of God, can you? Are we? We are.
We're not supposed to.
We are, and we know the word, and we know we trust God. We have faith in God, so we have to be mindful of those things. And lessons like this just kind of nudge us and remind us, you know, if you trust in God, you can't sway. You trust in Him.
Stephen, you stoned him.
That's right. They stoned him, and he just stood there.
And he spoke some of the words of Jesus.
Forgive them, for they don't know what they done. You just hit me upside the head with a rock.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm saying?
Forgive them. For the sake of Christ, yes. You know,
for the sake of Christ.
Like the missionaries is out there in the foreign lands in China and Muslims and all that. These Christian missionaries are being abused.
They are.
And they're being killed. And this is what the Word of God in Revelation tells us is going to happen if we stand up for Christ. So it is happening today.
And we're just not in that environment, but
right.
People that's abroad and you hear about it, getting shot, getting abused,
yes.
And don't
chopped
be,
out, head chopped
you know,
yeah.
It's just terrible. And we say, wow. And, you know, all we have to do is get up and come to church on Sunday morning. Sometimes that becomes an issue. You know, we don't have it so bad. We really don't have it so bad. So when we see, and God puts these things out here as a history for us, as a mirror for us to see, you know, rejoice and be exceedingly glad because you don't have it so bad. These are light afflictions. And the king called the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing and have saved the men? So he's knowing that they're not doing what I asked them to do. So what was their explanation here?
They give birth so fast.
So they are hard workers. You got them out in the field, the men's and the women's, and they're strong. And they not delicate like the Egyptians. They strong and they quick. They quick. And before I even get there, I can't help it, you know. And but God, was that truthful?
No. They lied to Jesus.
I asked the question, so I said, oh, okay. But it says here.
Can I remember to the 12th verse?
Okay.
Some clarification on the 2 verses.
Okay.
But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. So they already said the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to be bringing forth those children under the afflictions of this new Pharaoh. And so from what I'm saying, these midwives really didn't really didn't lie. He sort of told some truth in here.
Okay. In what way?
Because of the 12th verse I read and run down to the other.
The more they multiplied.
The more they
And their reason was they're quick. They are not like the Egyptians, delicate and slow.
And they got them out there in the field. They got them working.
And that makes them strong.
Makes them stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 12th and the 17th verse was? The 12th and the 17th verse, I believe it was, it kind of coincide with each other.
And the 19th verse was the midwives answering them.
Okay, the 19th verse.
Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, but they are lively and are delivered before the midwives coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were all forced into hard labor, so that made them strong and healthy.
Yeah.
So they weren't like, okay, do we see that? They were strong and healthy, and some deliverance are easier and quicker than others. So.
Especially if they get a lot of exercise.
And they got a lot of exercise because the more they taskmastered them and burdened them, you know, they just worked. And some people are just stronger and they just do. And others, you know, fall out and faint, and on the thing they know, I can't do that. I can't do that. All right, so, but it says, therefore God dwelt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. So they were fruitful, and they were safe, and they were easy in travail, and they produced many babies. And God was simply fulfilling the promise that He made. So it was like one of the promises God had made, that you will be like the sand and the dust and the stars. So the midwives had sense enough. It said the midwives feared God, and they weren't going to try to hinder something because of what the king said, when God has already put it out there and ordained it that you're going to have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
So who am I to go and try to stop that? You know? So God had already said you're going to have a lot of kids. So I wouldn't want to be the one to try to stop it either.
They didn't obey man.
They didn't. It's better to obey God rather than man, isn't it? And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that He made them houses. He blessed them, didn't He? He blessed them. And the midwives, they had many children too, and a great family, because God wants us to honor and obey Him. And you can't lose if you trust God. You can't lose if you live right. You can't lose. Can we get a handle on that? Living right, a lot of people are not into that. You know, this society do their own thing, don't know God. And what was the instance with the testimony you were telling me? He's just like Gandhi. I acknowledge him. I know God, but he's just like Gandhi, and he was a great guy, a good guy.
Yeah, he was a great guy. He was a good guy. A lot of religions say.
Right, but we got to go beyond that.
I am beyond that. I said, no, I won't talk to him. I just move on. I don't have to talk to people that.
He's more than a great guy.
If they cannot see that he's divine, he's a divine God. It tells you in the scriptures. You know, I mean, simple as to read it.
Read the word. He's almighty.
He's almighty.
He's everything.
There already.
Yes.
So when God said, let us, He wasn't talking to the wall or whatever. He was talking to His Son. He was there already.
Already.
He was God Himself already in heaven.
So when people don't have that concept, we can only pray for them. You know, because God have to open up their understanding for them to understand it, because in their mind, they think they're okay. They really think they're okay. And Pharaoh charged all the people, saying, every son that is born, ye shall cast him into the river. So we can't get the midwives to stop it or kill them at birth, but every son you catch, throw him in the river. Throw him in the river. And
save the girl.
Save the girl. So this is the way Exodus started off. And we have so much more to go, so much more to learn, so much more to go through that we're just excited about this. Now, these are some of the things that we named when we started off that we will encounter as we go. The ones that came in, can you think of any more? Is there any more you can think of? The Red Sea, the plagues, Pharaoh, slavery, departure, deliverance, freedom, Moses' birth, prejudice, the clouds, the fire, commandments, the wilderness, manna, promised land, memorial, the burning bush, the tabernacle. When you hear the word Exodus, what comes to your mind? Anything other?
After exit.
Exit? Okay. I think that would be with departure, deliverance, freedom, exit. Any more you can think of when you come through Exodus?
Is that just for the ones that came in?
Anybody? You can think of some more?
During the time they were being delivered, when God told Moses to take the hyssop bush and dip it in the blood, he had told them to call them all in there, and anybody that's left outside of that gathering place, they would be lost. And it's the doorpost, the blood, the hyssop bush.
The doorpost, the blood. I spelled hyssop.
HYSSOP. Passover. Passover. Yes, because when he sees the blood, he will pass the death angel will pass over.
So these are some of the things that were initiated in the Passover, and the tabernacle was initiated in Exodus. So we have a lot going on here in Exodus. So we know the first persecution started in Exodus because it was an attempt to kill the babies. That's the first thing we know, trying to eliminate the seed because they knew Jesus Christ. And this was all part of the enemy's plan, the devil's plan. And we know that we're going to talk about each one of those things, and it's probably some more that we haven't thought about.
I was thinking about 40 seems like it's introduced here, and it's used a lot throughout the scripture, too. 40 years in the wilderness. The book itself has 40 chapters. He was on the mount for 40 days. 40, the significance of 40.
Okay, that's true. And he had to go live in Midian. I think he was gone 40 years old. Because he ran away when he was 40, then he was there 40.
How about the spies? When they went, the spies were sent for 40 days.
So we're going to point out all the 40, the significance of 40.
And Jesus fasted 40 days and 40 nights.
He sure did.
So something about that 40.
Wait a minute, two people talking.
Okay. That's what I was agreeing with her, something about that 40, because Jesus fasted 40 days and 40 nights.
So we're going to explore that. We're going to come back and look at our list as we go. Okay?
No, I'm saying 40 was spiritually with
Probation.
probation.
Okay. Anything else anybody can think of when you hear the word Exodus comes to mind? I know we do the Red Sea. I know we do the 10 plagues. What were some of the plagues?
Frogs, flies,
darkness, death.
Young man.
G-N.
G-E. Water.
Death was the firstborn. Locust. Darkness.
from frogs, flies, gnats, water to blood, death, locusts. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
The last one, at least, starting on the Red Sea.
That's not part of the plague.
It wasn't the plagues. We naming the plagues.
That's not a plague.
That was a miracle. That was one of the miracles. And we named some of those. We can put it down here. The parting of the Red Sea, that's all part of this one. Okay. But the 10 plagues were before they got here.
Is it 10 plagues?
So we missing 3.
Frogs, flies, gnats, water, blood, death, locust, darkness.
Isn't he stricken with some kind of...
The cattle.
Yeah, cattle. I thought they were stricken too.
They were mirroring. That was some type of disease.
Yeah.
Darkness was the sun. Now, what comes to mind when you see all of this? What makes you smile? What comes to mind when you...
So that was all the things that they worshipped, right?
These were gods. These were gods. So your God got sick. You worship the sun. The sun, I can't see it. It's dark. God showed His might and His power and who He was by deflating your God. That always makes me smile. That ain't nobody God but God.
That's right.
And you know what comes to my mind is that all these things, these plagues, came upon those in Egypt, but none of them touched Egypt.
It didn't go to Goshen, did it? It didn't go to Goshen.
About flies.
Flies, we got flies. 1, 2.
Boils.
Boils.
And then the thunder and hail.
Hail. Okay. So all of these were instruments and gods to them. The Nile River, so He just turned it just to blood, Can you imagine how that smells? Can you imagine? I mean, He just attacked your God.
Nothing they used for water.
Right.
Couldn't drink it.
Couldn't drink it.
Every time they get a pitcher from the house and pour it, and it
There's
was
something
blood.
in it. Or it either had flies in it, or frogs in it, a locust in it.
And God of light was Ra, the sun god. Or what was it?
We can name all of them because each one of them had a name. And I'll bring that next week because I read it, but I didn't maintain it. But this just lets you know that God is the only God, and no matter what you're doing, it won't work. None of man's issues will work. And there were 4 key periods of miracles, and Moses and Joshua is the first period where we had a lot of miracles going on here. And then the second was Elijah and Elijah, and the third one was Daniel and Ezekiel, and then the fourth period of miracles was Jesus Christ Himself. All right, so we're on our way. We're started, and we're going to jump in gear and go forth and trust God that He'll give us understanding of what we're talking about as we journey through Exodus. Anybody have any questions?